if you found yourself sort of stuck in your practice, you've kind of stagnated and are no longer getting better, but you want to keep improving, there's probably one of three things, or maybe a combination of all three of them, that are holding you back. And in this video, I'm going to explain what they are and how you can get over them. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at QuickStartClarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. I bet throughout your musical journey, you've had sort of phases and you can really clearly identify them, at least in hindsight, where sometimes, especially when we're first getting started, you're sort of taking off and things are really feeling good and you're making progress. You're starting to play your first notes. You're starting to actually get the sound to come out of the instrument well. And then you kind of hit this plateau where things kind of get stuck. Things start to stagnate, you're struggling with the same mistakes over and over again, and you start to wonder, am I ever actually going to get better? Am I ever going to be able to play that I want to play the way I want to play? Am I going to struggle with crossing the break, articulation, fast fingers, whatever it may be? You start thinking, I'm probably going to struggle with this forever, and it almost feels like you've hit the cap of your talent. But I personally don't really believe in talent. I think everybody has a huge potential to play really well if they're approaching it in the right way. And I think there's three things that commonly hold us back and are three reasons why we get stuck at those plateaus, and are the three things that we can do differently and work on to actually break through those plateaus. And those three things come down to a failure of one of the three steps in the deliberate practice process. So if you're not familiar, the deliberate practice process is the process of deliberately improving. Practice, almost, I wish there was another word for practice in there. Practice has so many meanings. It's like, it's just the stuff we do while we're in the practice room. It's something that we're supposed to do because our teachers tell us to do it. And it has such a weakened sort of colloquial meaning of like, oh, go practice, do your practice, 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 that it's kind of lost the real purpose of it, which I think is to work on improving and work on making something better and developing a skill. So maybe almost deliberate development process, deliberate growth process, deliberate improvement process would make more sense rather than just this sort of weak term of practice. But those three things that are holding you back have to do with the deliberate practice process. And that process is to plan, do, and reflect, or I much prefer it in the order of do, reflect, plan. Because that plan is something that you're doing before you do it. But when we say plan, do, reflect, that seems like a big picture idea of, oh, I need to plan what pieces I'm going to work on, and then I need to actually do my practice and work on those pieces. And then at the end, I'll reflect and give myself a gold star and say, oh, that felt nice. I did the thing. But the deliberate practice process, especially when we're thinking of it as the deliberate improvement process, works so much better on a small scale where you do the bit of music you're working on, or even the long tones that you're working on. You reflect on how that's going, and then you make a plan to improve that specific little thing. So that's one thing that might help. That'll be one bonus tip for those three areas. There's also another bonus tip coming at the end, spoiler alert. But the first thing that we'll look at in that is actually the reflecting stage, because I think that's where most people get stuck in their playing, is on the reflection level. And what this looks like is you'll play through something and you won't like it. Something, it wasn't fast enough, the articulation was bad, notes didn't come out right, whatever it is, you won't like it. But that's all we do. We don't reflect deeper than that. So the first problem is not reflecting deeply enough and not actually taking the time to reflect. We just sort of fall into our automatic patterns of, I play this way, I make this mistake, that's just how I play, which ties into that idea of we've sort of hit our talent ceiling. We're starting to identify as that. We identify as, oh, I'm just someone who's not very good at rhythm. I'm somebody who's not very good at crossing the break. That's just the way I play. I've always struggled with it. That's my identity. I'm always going to struggle with it. So don't identify with your weaknesses. Don't make your continuous struggles your identity, because then they'll always be your struggles. Instead, reflect and ask, why is that not working well? What's happening there? Why isn't the note coming out the way that I want? What would I need to do to be able to eventually play this comfortably and confident at a faster speed? Whatever it is you're working on, you need to reflect deeper. So the first problem is you're not reflecting enough. The solution to that is to actually reflect deeper. Ask why, ask how, ask what you can do to actually improve whatever the surface level problem is. Which brings us to problem number 2, the second thing that's largely holding people back, and that's in the plan phase of practicing. So you've now reflected, and hopefully you've gone a little deeper with that reflection to really understand what's going on and why that problem exists. Now we need to make sure that in our plan, we actually do something to address it. And that's really what the second big problem is. The second thing holding people back is not doing things differently, not making a plan to make a change. And we end up going through the same process of what I call pointless practice, where we do the same thing over and over and over and over and hope it's going to fix itself. And the reason why we do this is because in the past, it maybe has fixed itself. There was probably stuff when you were first learning, maybe playing down to low notes, for example, where they weren't working. But then as you got more familiar with even just holding the clarinet and putting your fingers on the holes, eventually they started working. And this has probably happened to you in your practice. And I think this is the way most people practice, is we play through something, notice a problem, and think, oh, that was a problem. I want to do that better. Do it again. It still happened. I'll try it again. Oh, cool. I got it on the third try. Now it's better. Do it again the next time you're practicing, because most of us, once we get it right once, then we move on. So you do it the next time you practice, same mistake pops up again. You're like, oh shoot, I thought I fixed that already. I did that before. So let me do it again, because last time I just did it a few times and eventually it came out right. So do it again, do it again, do it again. Ah, I got it right. Great, go on. Next day, it's a problem again. And this is why, if you feel that you struggle with inconsistency in your playing, this is exactly why, because you're doing pointless practice where you're doing it again and kind of just hoping that it's going to fix itself. This pointless practice leads to inconsistency, frustration, and can really fall into that identity problem of, because most of the time I have this problem, so that just must be how I play. The solution to this is to plan to do something differently and deliberately do something differently. So what this might look like is, you have the mistake that happens. Instead of doing it again and seeing if you're able to get it on another try, do it again with one variable that you're going to do differently to see if it's better. Maybe it's more air, maybe it's better finger position, hand position, maybe it's better finger coordination, thinking about being a little snappier with the fingers. Maybe you think about moving the tongue less or moving less of the tongue. There's a bazillion different variables you can experiment with, but you need to start experimenting, and like a good scientist, you want to make sure that you're controlling the variables as much as you can and just working on the one little thing so that when you do it, you can know, that worked. Thinking more air at this point is what fixed it. Then the next time you make the mistake, you can know immediately, I need to remember to think more air at this point, and then that'll fix it. And maybe it won't fix it the next time it comes around, but you can then go back again, go deeper, reflect a little bit more deeply to be like, oh, I was still thinking about more air, but actually this time I was also tightening up my embouchure, and that's what made it not come out. So I'm going to plan to do it deliberately differently, where I keep the good air that I was doing, but make sure that I'm not tensing up the embouchure and keep that relaxed and independent. Do it. Boom, it worked. Now I know more air at this point and keep the embouchure relaxed. and then we start building layers to actually confidently get it, and we make the improvement, and we start to build the identity that I can actually cross the brakes smoothly or whatever it is that you're working on because you've solved it and fixed it and worked on it, and now you're deliberately practicing rather than pointless practicing. And that brings us to our third thing that is likely holding you back, and the reason why you're feeling like you've hit a plateau in your practice and haven't made much improvement in the past weeks or months. And that's because when you're doing it, you aren't aware of what you're actually doing. This one is the trickiest one to know is happening and the trickiest one to fix, and is one where having a teacher can be really helpful and getting some individual unique feedback, because when you get that actual feedback from the teacher, they can see things that you're doing and they have a bigger awareness of what problems are likely to be occurring and what potential problems can be coming from whatever surface level issue is happening. So having a teacher can be really helpful for this. And speaking of that, actually, did you know that you can get one-on-one asynchronous video feedback with me as part of the Denizen program? There's more information about that at the end of this video, but it's a super awesome deal for a very, very affordable monthly subscription. We can actually work together one-on-one without the headache of trying to schedule specific lesson times, which is especially helpful if you're in other time zones from where I am. So you can go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter to check that out, or wait till the end of the video to learn a little bit more about that. But back to the idea of this third thing holding you back, of not being aware of what you're doing. The way that this shows up is you've reflected and you have a clear idea on what the problem is. You have a plan for what you want to do deliberately differently, but no matter what you try to do deliberately differently, none of it seems to be working. And that's because as you're doing it, one, you're either not actually changing the thing that you're wanting to change. So you think more air, maybe you do like 1.5% more air, but really it needed at least 10% more air to actually make a difference. So you feel like you're doing more air, but it's not enough more air, for example. Or the other way it will show up is you're doing more air, which is great, but you aren't aware that you're also tightening the embouchure more, or the fingers now aren't coordinating as well, or you're squeezing the clarinet so you're leaking on a hole or something like that, because you don't have the bandwidth to have the awareness of everything that's going on. And again, this one's a little trickier because if you're not aware of the problem, then you can't know what to fix, and it's hard to reflect deeper on it. So the solution to this one is to do simpler music, particularly to really lean into your warm-ups. On something like long tones, you'll have a much better chance of having more bandwidth to be aware of all of the things that are going on because the music is so simple. If you're playing something fast and struggling with crossing the break, for example, then you're going to have to be worrying about the notes and trying to get the fingers to land and trying to move fast enough and do the right rhythm and all of that stuff. And that's going to take up all of your awareness and all of your bandwidth. If you're playing long tones, just going from A to B, holding the notes as long as you want with no time pressure, no other notes around it that you have to worry about, it's just those two notes, then your brain doesn't even have to think about the notes. The notes are automatic, and now all of that sort of working memory and your attentional awareness can all go towards how's the air, how's the embouchure, how are the fingers, etc., whatever you need to be paying attention to make that happen. So those are the three things that can be holding you back. Those are the three ways in which we start pointless practicing rather than deliberately practicing and continuing to make growth. And as long as you're deliberately practicing and finding those opportunities for improvement and sort of getting scientific with your reflecting, planning, experimenting, doing, then you will continue to move forward. It might not be fast, it definitely won't be linear, but you will continue to move forward as long as you're deliberate with what you're improving. Unless, and this is the one bonus thing that might be holding you back. It's not one of the three, but it certainly is one of the things that can hold you back. This probably isn't the case for you if you're watching this video, because you're somebody who does care about improving and you are trying to improve, and you're sort of frustrated because you've hit that ceiling or you've hit that plateau and you're wanting to break through it. But there is also something that holds people back, which is along the lines of awareness, and it's the awareness that you could be better. The way that this shows up is people who play things and think, that sounded really good. That was pretty close to the right rhythm. The notes pretty much came out. Like, yeah, that was great. The reason why this happens is because we don't have a greater understanding of how the piece should go, how the clarinet playing can be, and we're just sort of content with what is objectively kind of mediocre playing. To us is totally fine, because we don't have that greater awareness. And again, if you're watching this video, this probably doesn't apply to you, but that's something to have in the back of your mind, is once you feel like I'm not hitting a plateau where I want to be better, but I'm not getting better, that's the first three things we talked about. But once you start hitting a ceiling of, I think I'm playing good, I think that's the way it should go, I'm happy with it, that's awesome, and that feels good. But make sure that you're getting exposure to professional playing, other clarinetists besides just your band that you play in, getting exposure to people who are better musicians, maybe not even clarinetists, but whatever instrument, even vocalists are really, really musical, and you can learn a lot from that. And you need to sort of broaden your horizons and open your mind to the potentials again, to create that gap, to find more potential for improvement and more opportunities for improvement. So those are my three main things holding you back, plus the little bonus. Let me know in the comments if any of these in particular are holding you back, and how this is going to sort of change your approach to start being more of a deliberate practicer rather than a pointless practicer. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the QuickStart Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return, where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.